All right. So, welcome. Right now, you are speaking to a group of students in Norway.
Well, hello. My name is Keith Ponton. I am an additional needs assistant, and I work in schools in southern Scotland with children with learning disabilities. Uh, I was contacted by. First of all, can I stop? Can I call you Pollyanna, or do I have to call you Miss?
You can go ahead and call me Pollyanna.
Yeah. I was contacted by Pollyanna about a week ago to basically she wanted to interview me and my and talk about certain aspects of British culture and British life and politics and stuff, which I'm very happy to do today.
Welcome. And my first question to you is something that comes up very often here in conversation. You hear people here in Norway talking about British people, right, as a group of people. So usually they might be referring to people from Great Britain. They might be referring to an English person. They might be referring to a Scottish person. What is the correct definition of
Well,
a British person?
eh, well, Britain only refers to the island, the main island of Scotland, England, and Wales. So there's 6 counties in Ireland which are part of the UK. But it should only refer to those people on the British mainland in those 3 countries. However, I'm a Scottish nationalist. I want Scotland to be an independent country. So I don't mind being called British, but I prefer if people called me Scottish because that's my nationality.
And that's very important that you're clarifying that because I feel like there is a lot of ignorance in the world about what it is. To, people usually don't even know so much about what's, especially when you go to the United States. When you
Yes,
talk, they hear an accent that's a bit different. Oh, you're British. Oh, and they don't really can't really tell the difference between the accents and
yeah,
the different dialects. What
yeah.
do you have to say
That's
about
totally
that?
well. That's totally understandable. I'm not broad. I don't have a particularly broad Scottish accent. I've because I've lived in London and stuff, so I had to temper my accent a bit so I was able to be understood. Um, but I mean, as a generalization, you can see why people would make that a just say like people from Wales and England and Scotland and mix them all up and stuff like that. That's totally understandable.
So tell me about life where you live. Tell me where you live and what it's like to a person that has never heard anything about where you live and where you're from. What would you say?
Well, I come from the Scottish borders, which is south of Scotland. I live in a small rural town called Hawick. It's about 14,000 people there, and it's surrounded by like hills and 2 valleys, which means we get lots of rain. But yeah, it's a very rural area where I live, as is, and we're only about 14 miles, about maybe 40 kilometers away from the English border. And although it's an open border, it has to be there because Scotland has a separate legal system. To, so it's not the same legal system as England. So there has to be a demarcation on the border. Um, so yeah, it's a rural, it's a lovely, beautiful place, but not much happens here. That's all I can say.
All right. So one of the questions I had to ask you about regarding politics is about the prime minister. I want you to talk about him in regards to, for instance, how does he compare to previous leaders?
Um, well, first of all, Rishi Sunak is the Prime Minister, and he's the first Prime Minister of colour that the UK's ever had. Now, that's where the positives ends with me. I'm not a supporter. I'll make that absolutely clear. He was voted in by members of the Conservative Party, not members of the public. We have a parliamentary democracy here, which means that the party in power can change a leader and then thus changing the prime minister. It doesn't have to go to the people, as long as they're within their parliamentary term. So I do feel a bit cheated because we've not had a chance to vote for this guy yet. As in comparison with the others, his two predecessors, Liz Truss was prime minister for a month, who she beat Sunak in a leadership contest. But she was a disaster. She crashed the economy within 1 month. So like her party got rid of her, just absolutely cut her head off straight away. The one before that was Boris Johnson, who I'm sure lots of people know, but he was a corrupt liar. So I'm not sure how much of this interview you're going to be able to use, but it's well founded. As I say, I'm not a supporter of that party. I'm consider myself to be on the left of politics. So I'm like we've been straddled with a government for 13 years, which has been on the right and far right of politics here, I would say. And Scotland, where I'm from, we don't vote for them. We haven't voted Conservative since 1955. We're not about to start voting Conservative either. So that's the problem. That's where our grievance comes, because England will vote for a Conservative government again. We won't. It's just not us, not who we are.
I think it's very important to hear from a real person. My students, they have a textbook, and in the textbook, they have the map, and they show where Scotland is, where England is, and what the British Isles really is, and Great Britain, all the
Yeah.
differences. It's all explained on paper, but I want them to hear from a real person how these things play out. And when you're talking about your views on politics, and that is very important because that's the perspective of a real person. So feel free to say as much as you can about your perspective.
Well, I mean, my first perspective, like as a broad thing, I believe in equality all the way through, all the way down the line. You know, I don't believe in a hierarchy of equals, etc. What I would say is, like, we have a situation at the moment whereby the right wing are just coming to the end of their. There'll be a general election in about 2 years in the UK, and the Conservatives, I think, will be almost wiped out in the UK. I think they're heading for a massive drubbing because they've just been in power for too long. We've got one of the worst cost of living crisis at the moment, which they made. It's entirely their fault. And if they get into power again, there'll be trouble, I think, because it's not only people agitating in Scotland to become independent, but you've actually got people in Wales now. Independence is polling about, I think, in the 30s. Now that's the highest it's ever been in Wales. It's climbing. So you've also got people agitating it in the north of Ireland as well, who want a referendum on uniting Ireland as a whole. So you might well see if the Conservatives get in again. I think that'll spell the end of the United Kingdom as an entity. I think the constituent parts of the United Kingdom will split up and revert back to their countries.
So how do you feel about other aspects of culture? Because there is a huge deal being made here in Norway about multiculturalism. I want you to talk about the pros and cons in that situation, and how do you see that in Scotland?
Uh, well, first of all, I'll lay my cards on the table. I believe wholeheartedly in multiculturalism, and I think that, and that's a mainstream opinion in Scotland. It's not like I'm not out of the ordinary here. It's there's only two main population centres really in Scotland. It's been Edinburgh and Glasgow. That contains more than half of the country's population, and there is more people of colour living in the more urban areas. and lots more people have settled and stuff. I mean, Scotland didn't used to be like that. It was white, a white country really. But I mean, I like it. I've got to say, it's it's good to see. I mean, I lived in London where like it was multicultural. Like you turned the corner, there was people of every country and no countries. Um, and that's what I liked about living in those sort of urban areas. You've got a representation of literally every country in the world, and I quite enjoyed that.
Those are very positive. You've said a lot of positive things about that, but do you think that there are some people who have a problem with it in the
For
country?
sure, yeah, for sure. You will get people because and I don't like saying the word ignorant, but I mean, let's face it, that's what they are. They're not as well educated. They don't come from the, and a lot of the people who you find with these sort of views come from areas like where I am now, where there's like big rural areas, who, for some reason, like hate people of color for, I just don't understand it. I mean, as I say, I think it's just ignorance at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to.
And what you were saying about politics might not be very easy for somebody who is on the outside to understand. But one thing that I really want you to make very clear for my students is because you talked about the separation in the legal system. Can you talk about that in the different countries?
Well, Scotland has a separate legal system. The the Act of Union in 1707, which joined the Kingdom of Scotland and England together, Scotland was left with its religion, the Church of Scotland. It was left with its own legal system and its own educational system. So that wasn't subsumed into the English system, as it were. Um, so, I mean, those are like some of the differences. The most striking difference to our legal system is we have three verdicts at the moment. You have not guilty, guilty, not proven, which is totally separate from the English legal system, which is not guilty and guilty, as the verdicts go. Like, although I do believe that the Scottish government are trying to get rid of the not guilty verdict, the not proven verdict at the moment.
I think it's a, we have a very, how do I put it? I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we get a lot of programs here in Norway from different parts. We
Mm.
get English programs, Scottish programs, Irish programs on TV. So people have that romanticized version of what life is where you are. What do you have to say about those stereotypical things that people say about Scottish people that may or may not be true?
First of all, we don't all wear kilts all of the time. um, Kilts are generally worn for if you're going to someone's wedding or something like that, at a special occasion. Um, just trying to think what other myths. I'm not going to say anything bad about the Loch Ness monster because I would like to believe it exists, because I think that's a really good thing. But probably the probability, no, I don't think Nessie exists either. I'm just trying to think what other myths. Um, I don't. I think that's it actually. The old kilt and the kilt and the Loch Ness monster.
And those are things that will definitely come up because when I show this interview to the students, before I show it, we'll do like a brainstorm and talk about different things that come to their heads. Okay, we say Scotland, what do you think of? And I'm pretty sure these two things will come up. So, do you think that Scotland is somewhat misrepresented or in movies and TV? And do you think that people put out there like a version of Scotland that's not very real? Do you feel like annoyed when you see Scotland represented or portrayed in film? Because I feel like that. I'm from Brazil, although I lived in the United States. But when I say, oh, that's not how it is in Brazil, come
Mm.
on. Do you ever feel like that, a bit annoyed?
Occasionally, we seem to. Scottish actors seem to play the hard man in like, or the thug, the guy with menace, which I think is a massive stereotype. Which I mean, you get people like that, but not everybody's like that for sure. And it is rather annoying. Or they go one worse, and like the Scottish guy who plays like a psychopath, a proper psychopath. So there's also I'm not sure the movie Trainspotting did us many favors either, because
It's a very popular movie here in
it's a
Norway.
very good movie. I mean, I've read the book and seen the film, and it's they're both excellent. However, a lot of people think we're all heroin addicts. That's not true in the slightest.
All right, so we're closing in 16 minutes. I want to say thank you so very much for this. It's been a tremendous experience, very educational. You have no idea how much you will enrich the curriculum for us, because like I said, we have the book and they read everything that's on the book, but I don't think that they get as clear a picture as they would get from a real person. So they get to hear you talk instead of just, because we have audio files and
Right, right.
it's usually actors. And I can't guarantee it's going to be a real Scottish person that's going to be talking on those audio files. So it's going to be fantastic for them. So thank you so very much for this, and we'll
You're
stay
very
in
well.
touch on Facebook. And
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. It's been lovely talking to you.
bye.
Bye.